All right, awesome. Hello, thank you for joining our webinar. I'm going to share my screen here. Hold on a second here. Let me go share my screen. Uh, Ba-ba-bum. Okay, I am sharing my screen. All right. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Okay, a little thumbs up from Carl, please, or somebody's. All right, awesome. You can see my screen. All right, thank you for joining the webinar. This is on the future of canvassing, and I really appreciate it. Uh, we, when someone hosts a webinar and has a jurisdiction also as a speaker, it's really nice to see such a large attendance. We invited the entire country to join this webinar, and we got a lot of attendance from all over. I happen to be in Virginia. The company is headquartered in North Carolina, but we got attendance from California and Arizona and Illinois and Maine. I mean, like all over. So I'm really happy about that maybe this topic hit a nerve. All right. I'm gonna go through just a little bit of the agenda and some hospitality. The webinar is scheduled to be just 50 minutes. Anything that in here that you want more, like you can always just send a note. If you have like a question for Carl or Stephanie from Norfolk or for myself, you can always ask later. I'll be able to get you, phone numbers and emails if you want to reach out to people. So what I was going to do was uh, at the end of this, we're going to have question and answer, but you can go into the chat and there's a Q&A button and you can ask a question. I'd appreciate if you have a question. We may address it at the very end of the webinar, but if you want to start typing those in at any time, that would be great. We also have moderators from Reason who will be in the chat that can answer questions as well live. All right, so what I was going to do is I was going to set the stage of what the discussion was and what we learned, because I want this webinar to be an educational webinar. I want, clearly we're with a business, but I did not want this to be a sales pitch. I wanted it to be as far from a sales pitch as I could go, because we were looking at this problem and clearly there's interest in trying to solve canvassing as a problem. And then after I was going to speak from the city of Norfolk, we have Carl and Stephanie, and I'll have an introduction slide for them, and then we'll go into question and answer. All right, so let me dive right in. All right, so when we were looking to into this problem, the problem that we saw in canvassing, we started to ask different jurisdictions all over the country. So, parishes in Louisiana, counties, or even in this case in Virginia, since it's a Commonwealth state, cities can have their own taxation. But we talked to townships and towns, and we're like, and we talked to over 100. And the questions were like, what do you do for canvassing for businesses? How do you canvass? And do you canvass at all? And what we found through these interviews was that very, very few of your peers actually canvass. Um, and what I mean by that is, like, every once in a while they'll canvass, they'll sporadically check, they'll have a plan to canvass. They'll get around to it every 3 years, maybe, or 5 years. Like, yeah, we're going to get some people out. And there was a lot of reasons why they weren't canvassing. Some did have programs where they were like, well, this is what we do. We actually go and get some data. Very, very, very few. Actually, when I say very, very few, only one jurisdiction actually went and got data in any way to help augment their canvassing process. Others did little spot checks. Some hired it out and paid a different company to do either a spot check for them or totally canvass an entire jurisdiction. They just can't, they just hired it out. It was so, it's such a painful process that they hired it out. And so then what I tried to do is I tried to then put the things that I heard and put it into little bullet points, and it kind of fell into two different categories. So like the first one was, well, what of the vast majority, I'm talking like 95+% that really had no process or repeatable thing every year. Like, well, what was the reason? And so there were like one of the big ones was this is super staff intensive. To canvass my entire jurisdiction, I would have to have a lot of people. I don't have those people. They're doing something else. Andy, we're really busy doing this, and then we do this, and then to go door to door and canvass in the old style is a lot of effort. Also, that kind of fell into, well, it was time consuming. So it took a long, so even if I had the staff, in order to do our entire jurisdiction, like it was just going to take a lot of time. And we had other things to do that had a higher priority. I also heard a lot that it was dangerous for staff. So um, I have to say, ever since, especially ever since COVID, there's been like this really growing trend around incivility. And so having people out and about interacting with the public face to face had like an element of danger. But it also went to, um, hey, we've got these county or city or government vehicles as well. So we're taking the risk all over for that. So I have to like trust that all these things are going to happen. And then one that surprised me was geography. And what I mean by that was when I started to talk to uh, jurisdictions, especially out west, where they were like, Andy, I don't think you understand how large our county is. And I'm like, I will, what? And they're like, our land mass is the size of New Jersey. And it's going to take 4 hours for us to drive one direction in 120-degree heat for us to get to the other end of our county just to look at it. And I'm like, that's really something. But it also was, I heard the same kind of problem geography wise from really dense urban areas. So like there's a really dense city center, and they're like, Andy, it would take it's 4 hours of traffic driving around just to hit a bunch of businesses because the traffic in our area is just so bad. Also, once their team left the office, the managers felt like, well, the current way that canvassing is done, there's a tracking issue. Like, I don't even know I don't know what, like once my people, the staff leaves the office, like, well, I, I don't even know if they're getting it done. Did they do the entire jurisdiction? What's the progress? Did they just go and take the day off? I don't know. It's difficult for me to now manage my staff once they leave the office. And then the biggest one I'd have to say was around data. So the data, they're like, well, our data has issues. We've neglected to look at the data and to correct the data over time because data has management issues. So they don't even know if the data that they're pulling up is going to be advantageous for their staff to go out and look around because there's a lot of businesses that may have gone out of business or they're new or they've moved and they when they recorded it, they typed it in wrong and didn't record an address, or the address was given to them wrong, and so now their data, or especially over time, starts to just get worse and worse. And so data was a huge issue. They worried about it. And then some other things popped up when I was like, well, if you did canvas, what were some things? And there was you just like some structural issues, which was all of it was very paper intensive. So they were like, well, we'll print out an Excel spreadsheet and kind of drive around and look at things on an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay, well, what if you noticed, Andy has a taco stand and you wanted to get him in the books? So we're like, well, then you'd kind of make notations, and then you'd, on a separate piece of paper, you would write down that you called Andy and you visited Andy, you sent him a letter, you did things on a piece of paper, and then you're like, okay, so then how do you track all that effort and where it is? And what if your assessing person, went on vacation or retired? Like, where is the, just because you've identified a business doesn't mean it came into compliance. And so then they're like, yeah, we're tracking it all on paper. It's really difficult to manage completeness and progress and the whole effort. And then also there was issues around, well, if I did identify these businesses, like I have issues around creating fair and equitable assessments, um, and knowing what kind of assets this business has and things like that. So it's just the whole process was difficult, and so it kind of gets pushed aside as like it's so painful, I'm just going to set it aside. So what I did is I took all of the things that I heard from all these different kinds of jurisdictions all over the country, and what I did was I put them in to like three different buckets. So the first issues were it's time intensive, it's time consuming, it's the geography, the manager's ability to manage, all of those things I put into one bucket. And then another bucket was, well, if we were able to use data and bring a different process to the system, could we solve those issues? And so when I'm looking at what if we were to envision um, canvassing from a different perspective, a more modern perspective, and said, well, what if we were to pull in a ton of outside databases and help you just identify the things to look at in your data. So if you had, 10,000 businesses in your jurisdiction, could I, with data, make it more efficient? Could I, if you thought that Andy's Tacos was there, and we thought that with all this extra data, we thought Andy's Tacos was there, could we say, don't look at that one. Let's look at just the ones where there's a mismatch in the data. And could we take that 10,000 businesses in your jurisdiction and narrow it down to something smaller where you could then like, okay, now I'm much more, and it's much more efficient. I'm now much more, so I get rid of the time consuming. It's not staff intensive. I get rid of the geography things. If I can investigate from a map electronically, do I have to actually go and visit it? So like if we were to apply data and a map to the problem, could we alleviate a lot of the issues that we were seeing? And then, of course, we're looking at if we could do that, then we would have to build something to help you track it, because you would want a more digital software approach rather than on paper. So this is the track with software in the middle. And then also on the fairness side, hey, could we create something to help you create estimates that were repeatable and equitable, even though you had staff turnover and whatnot, that you could have a process for there. And the whole thing came to, could we invent a new process that could be adopted that might make this all work? And so to answer all that, we came up with three different products that tried to make this whole canvassing for businesses and bring it into the 21st century, if you will. All right, so with all of that, I'm going to do a little demo of it. There's three products. There's no way to do all three products in a 10-minute demo. There's no way to do it. There's so many features and functionality and things like that. What I'm going to try to do is just show you what we were trying to accomplish by grabbing data and mapping the data so that you could investigate electronically from the convenience of your home office or your office, rather than having to and solve these issues. So I'm going to not cover every aspect of it, but I'm hoping to give you the theme of what we were trying to do. All right, so let me go and hold on a second. Let me show you the first one, which is digital canvas. So what we did was, sorry, hopefully you can still see my screen, right? Okay, awesome. All right, so what you're looking at is we asked, the jurisdictions, and we'd say, hey, give us your data of what you thought were the current businesses. Which businesses did you think were the active ones where you would send an invoice to? Like, these are your good businesses. And we also asked for the commercial and residential addresses. And then what we did was we took that data from the jurisdiction and we hit it against a bunch of outside data. So let's go back to Andy's Tacos as an example. If Andy's Tacos was operating in this jurisdiction that I'm showing you here, but I wasn't compliant and I wasn't showing, I wasn't registered, I wasn't paying my taxes, I wasn't filing for my business personal property, didn't have a business license, those kinds of things, it wouldn't be in the jurisdiction's data. And we would be looking for all these kinds of things where if you searched Andy's Tacos in this jurisdiction in, for instance, Google, it would pop up with hours of operation. Review websites would have all kinds of reviews. Like, well, Andy's Tacos has these reviews on these different websites, and they're all very current. There might be a website for andystacos.com. I might also have a Facebook page or any kind of other things that would have a very strong indication that I have a business, I'm operating it in this jurisdiction, but I'm not on your list, the government, in this case, it's a township's list. And so then what we did is we would put it as a pinpoint on this map. So you're looking at a live Google map, and the jurisdiction in this case, as I scroll in, you can see it's kind of a heat map at first, but then it gets into individual pinpoints. And what you're looking at is this green color is the list of businesses that this jurisdiction thought was there. And in all of the data that we hit it against, and we hit it against a ton of data, we were like, we agree. All of these businesses are there. Those ones you think are there. And we found all of these different things that said, yep, Andy's Tacos is there. Everything is great. And there's a little filter here. So I'll just have it as active. But what if you wanted to know, well, which ones were closed? And what I mean by closed was, what if Andy's Tacos was compliant? But if you were to type in, Andy's Tacos in this jurisdiction in Google, it would say, oh, you know what? It's closed. And what if in all the other things like the review websites, there's not any current reviews and the website is down and there's no Facebook page. And there's a lot of indications that, you know what? Andy's Tacos may actually be closed. Well, we could put that as a pinpoint to look at. So let's add that to the map. So anything in this dark gray will be businesses that we think are closed. But what about businesses that are new? So Andy's Tacos isn't compliant, and I am operating in the jurisdiction, and I have all these indicators that I'm there. My hours, I got closed at 10 p.m. today. I have all these current reviews, et cetera, et cetera. Let's put those as new and put those as pinpoints on a map. And so those will be this light green. But also, what about businesses where the data didn't match up? So it didn't map well. There was an issue. The jurisdiction thinks something. Hey, we think Andy's Tacos. And we're like, yeah, but there's something wrong with the data. You may want to look at it. Let's put that as data review and put those on the map. And now what I'm getting at is I'm not as interested in when I'm doing canvassing. Let's try to get rid of all of the active businesses because those are the ones that the jurisdiction thought were there and we thought were there. And we can let's not look at them right now. Let's only look at the things that we're interested in. And so rather than canvassing and just driving around aimlessly with a spreadsheet and then just going door to door and like, yep, this is here, this is there. Why not just say, let's just look at the ones that we need to really look at. So for instance, and I'm going to go quickly here because of time. Let's look at this closed business. It's in gray. If I were just to click on it, the information on the left pops up for me to do more of an investigation. There's not a lot of links here. There's not a web page. You don't see a web page. You don't see a Facebook page. You don't see a lot of links on the left of the screen, but it did change. The reason why there's not a lot of links is that we think it's closed. We're not finding those things to populate there, which would all be clickable because this is a live Google map, right? And so if I clicked on this Google map here on Rose Frame Shop, it takes me directly to it so I can continue to do my investigation. Here's the Rose Frame Shop. Google thinks it's closed. And if I zoom in, I can click this little Street View guide, which is super cool. And then I look at right here. And then if I go, this was taken in October of 2023. See the date is there. But if I see more dates and just go back a year, you can see that there was a Rose Frame Shop, but it looks like it's starting to close. And so sometime during COVID, it looks like Rose Frame Shop unfortunately did not make it. But it's pretty interesting, right? So let's move this here. Okay, so now that we've done a closed business, let's look at these. Remember there was also a different color. There was this orange color for data review. So let's look at one of the data reviews. All right, so here is NeoPost USA, but there was no street address. So it just says Ferndale, Michigan. And thus we mapped it in the middle of an intersection because it's like, well, this is Ferndale. But if you were to mail something to NeoPost, it may not get there. So it's a data review. You really ought to look at it because this is the data coming from this jurisdiction's CAMA. This is their data. And it just, we're like, well, before we say it's there or not, you may want to look at it. And so there's the type of things that you'd find in data review. Now, I'm going to go very quickly here. What about the new business? Now, I don't want to click on this new business on a recorded webinar because it would imply that this new business is non-compliant. And I don't want to imply that some business and have them get all upset at us. So I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to switch from live data of a customer's data to this is reason training data to show a live business. All right, so I've switched from live data of a jurisdiction's data, and I'm switched to, just so we're clear, because I don't want to click on a live business saying that it hasn't registered when it truly has. And so we have some fake data here. I'm going to pick on, so now in the search, clearly, if I can search on this, I'm going to click on this Lux Nail Lounge. And I'm going to take Lux Nail Lounge through an entire investigation of all three things to show that what if we were to do this with data? Could we help you be more efficient in finding the things that are interesting and things that are new and different? And then let's track it, and then let's give it an assessment to get it into compliance. So all three phases of all the different pain points. So first, I'll click on it. It takes me directly to it. Let's do the investigation. Now, what we did for Lux Nail Lounge, which we would do for a normal business, is we would have their webpage and their Facebook page and those kinds of things. In this case, I'm going to use Reason Consulting. That's how we built it so that I could show you this. But Reason Consulting is not in Michigan at this address. So, but what we would do is provide the information for your staff to investigate. I'm in Virginia at my home office. I could be in the field, or I could be driving around. But in this case, I'm doing canvassing from Virginia of a Michigan jurisdiction. So I could click on if I had info on the Facebook page, I could click on that, and it would take me directly to to this hairstylist's Facebook page. Or if I clicked on here, this would be their web address. And in this case, of course, it's Reason Consulting. And these are the kinds of things that you would do to do an investigation where you're like, I want to know if this business is truly active in the system. And can we do this investigation just from, in a more efficient way? And all of these things appear would help you um, know if this business was legit or not. So like, here's the lead, some of the leadership team. So you're like, okay, it has staff. This business is legit. And you may, in your investigation, I'd recommend taking screenshots. Like, hey, let's take a screenshot for our records of these kinds of things. All right, so let's keep. Oh my God, I've got to go a little faster. All right, so then also at this point, I'd say, hey, let's look this business up in the Secretary of State, see if they've registered with the state. Now, we're a North Carolina business, so of course, in order for me to find it, I'd have to go to the North Carolina Secretary of State. But you can imagine that if you were wherever you are, you have your version of a Secretary of State, and then you click it here. There's Reason Consulting, but in this case, I was doing this nail salon, and then you get a lot of really interesting information. I would take a screenshot of this. Hey, I'm doing this investigation of this business. I want to prove its legitimacy. Now let's go back into Digital Canvas. At this point, I'd call. We provide a phone number, we provide a parcel ID, the first dates we'd seen it. Let's call the phone number. Hey, are you open? I'd like to talk to this Mark fella, because he looks like he's the registered owner. And once I've like, hey, you gotta, comply, I'm gonna try to create a case. So let's create the case. I can edit. It defaults as a new, but I could make it any of these things I want to. I can add my notes. I called and spoke to Mark on 5/15/24. I can upload my screenshots that I was taking. One was, the Secretary of State. I add my description of it. I can upload as many pictures as I want for it. And then I would want to create a case because I've done my investigation. I want to go further with this. And then I would create the case. What I don't want to do is create the case because it'll disappear. And where it goes is where it goes is, remember, we're in that was the first phase, Digital Canvas. Let's create a case manager because everything is being managed on spreadsheets and paper, and in our managers, they need the ability to manage what's going on, what's staff doing, where are things. So where that would go is it would go right to our case manager. And so you can see our case manager here where we have the different businesses get loaded into it, the different the status, the type, the subject name, who it's been assigned to, and a way for you to track all of the different cases that you're working, because there could be hundreds of businesses that you want to do an investigation on. So, and then this, you can change your view type, and you say, hey, I want to know, these pieces of information, or I can change your view. I can change, how I see it. I can also look for different things. I can say, I want to know, what lazy bones Andy's working on. So Andy's working on just these 3 businesses, or if I wanted to find a certain type of business. So I wanted something with donuts because Andy really likes donuts. As I start to type it in, there's Andy's Donuts, right? So I can find any of the cases that I'm working on. I can do any of these kinds of things. And in this case, I wanted to work on Luxdale Lounge. Remember back that's what I wanted to work on. So I can continue the case. I can look at the info of how I've been tracking it. I've reached out to Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble. Of course, this is fake information. I can add notes as I call and do things. I sent a letter, etc., right? On 5/15. And then I can create this case. I keep having to move this around here. Hold on. So I can create this case, and so I can hit save, and I've created a note. I can look at the attachments that I've uploaded, right? And all those different pieces are in the case manager, and I can change any of these things as I go. I can always edit it and change any of the pieces. I can move it from I'm in progress to now I'm in review. I can change document dates and locations. I can, as I talk to try to get, it's not Fred Flintstone at Lux Nails, it's just Fred. And then I hit save, and all of that changes as I manage the case. All right, so I'm going very quick now. And then the third aspect of it, if you recall, was the third part was, could we create more fair estimates? Um, could we make it so that you would know the kind of assets that were there? So we created this third thing called CAVs, where we have almost 400, gosh, we've gone over 430 now, business types here, listed here, where you would know the assets of that business type. I'm gonna go very fast. So if you wanted to know what is the typical assets of a sheet metal manufacturer, at the tip of your fingers here, you'd say, okay, well, they got an air compressor and a cutting machine, a forklift, grinder, jacks, and here's the prices, welders. A price is net new for a 10-person sheet metal manufacturer. And you can always change the number of employees and drive that down. You can adjust it, and you fill out the form up top. In this case, we're going to do the Lux nail salon. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a salon. Go here to nail salon. And then we fill out the information for Lux nail salon, nail lounge, and all the information that we found on them. You can see the assets are different. You're not going to see grinders and jacks and forklifts for a nail salon. It's going to be a different estimate. And what you're trying to do, and I'm just going to show you what it is here. I created one earlier. Here's the Lux Nail Salon. And what you're going to try to do is create really quickly an assessment. Now, we're Reason Consulting County, but here's Lux Nail Lounge in Charlotte, or wherever it was located in Michigan. And then here's the assets that it had listed out. You can have a place for notes and when you created it, and the assessor, and it creates a really quick form that you can send to the non-compliant business and say, hey, would love to have a discussion. Here's what a typical nail salon has for assets. Let's get this going. And so the whole goal on all that was, could we, hearing what was the issues with compliance, with business canvassing, break it down into different groups, and then spread it over and provide a process of different products so that you guys can have a more efficient way to possibly do business canvassing. All right, I've talked and talked, and now I'm going to hand it over to the city of Norfolk. This is Carl. He's the chief deputy, and this is Stephanie Bristow. She's the tax compliance supervisor. They're with the commissioner of the revenue office. In different states, you all have different titles, but they're the chief group doing the assessing work for the jurisdiction. So with all of that, please, Carl and Stephanie, take it away.
Thank you, Andy. That was very educational. As Andy's got down there, we are the Commissioner of Revenue here in Virginia, in Norfolk, Virginia. He's kind of got right down there in the below our names what we actually do, and it may be different in your state, but I think all of the jurisdictions here that are on from Virginia understand that we are the chief assessor, mainly of personal property tax, specifically in this case, business property tax. Norfolk is not a large locality. We've probably got about 240,000 population. We are home to the world's largest Navy base, so that eats into our tax base just a little bit. Here in Norfolk, we have about 19, what we want to say, registered businesses, meaning 19,000, registered businesses that we know about. But every day we know there's things popping up that are being missed, and people don't seem to always grasped the idea of having to have a business license. So we have been working with Reason for a long time using calves. So we got into this thing because of calves. We had been using calves for a number of years now as an assessment tool because it's a really good tool. That led us down the path here of looking at digital canvas and case manager. I'll give a little compliance history. You know, we used to have a compliance team of about 6 to 8 people. Those people were going out in the field almost every day. Well, they weren't always going out to discover new businesses. A lot of times they were going out to chase assessments and chase delinquents, mainly with fiduciary taxes. Here in Virginia, you pay fiduciary taxes such as a meals tax or an admissions tax. And what would happen is they wouldn't file their assessment. So, of course, they'd get a statutory assessment and owe a bunch of money. So we would try to go out and say, hey, you know, if you give us the numbers, you might not owe as much. So that's kind of where our compliance team was going at the beginning, more or less just visiting what we knew, which wasn't a lot at the time. And then, of course, COVID hit and compliance basically shut down. You know, there was no restaurants to visit. There was few businesses to visit. So that department sort of got disbanded and people got, you know, working on other things. Since COVID, we have slowly been putting compliance back together. We hired Stephanie to take the reins, and she's doing a fabulous job. And we wanted another way because we had taken it from 6 to 8 people down to basically at one time it was just Stephanie and another person. So we didn't want them to have to be out in the field every day. And when we ran across this at one of our conventions, you know, we thought it was a fantastic idea, and Andy did a great job of selling it to us because it's a good product. Some important things that we think to remember is the data review. You know, your data is important. One of the things that we learned right at the beginning when we started working with Andy and the team was that we also record what's called a trade as name. You know, maybe different in your state or your locality, but you got to, companies might have one name, but they go by another name. Well, when Andy first ran the data, the trade name wasn't really taken into account. But once we talked, because Andy's very willing to listen and make this thing better, he realized, okay, we can do this, and we ran it again, and it returned a much better results for us. We have been using Digital Canvas and Case Manager for about 3 months now. Again, we've been using CAVs a lot longer than that. But as Andy showed you, it does kind of roll together to get you the complete picture of what you can do when you discover a new business, or even when you have businesses that aren't necessarily compliant. We had, during COVID, we kind of didn't have methods to really see who was open or closed. We would sometimes go by return mail, and that's not always the greatest method to close a business. So we felt like Digital Canvas was going to give us a much better picture of what's out there, what we can clean up in our data, and what we need to be going after. So I think that's a kind of a quick overview of us and what we do. And Stephanie might tell you a few things about the actual numbers we discovered once we got into using it.
Sure. So thank you, Carl. So as Carl mentioned, you know, we've been faithful users of CADS for a number of years, and so we were already believers in the product line, and so it was you know, it was a very interesting addition to pick up Digital Canvas specifically, but also the Case Manager. We're using that to replace a rather antiquated Microsoft Access program that we've been using up to this point that had quite a few bugs. So that's been a nice addition to our product line. So, and as Carl mentioned, we have a smaller compliance department now. So it's myself, today it's myself and 2 investigators. And in this day and age, you know, with safety in mind, typically we would send the investigators out together. So if I'm sending 2 people together, that's the entire department out in the field, and you know, resources are limited, time is limited, and you can't get as much done. So we're very interested in what Digital Canvas could do for us, and so we got the product and started putting into place a a couple months ago. And just so you know exactly how we're handling it here, I've got one investigator really working the new businesses, and I've got one investigator working the closed businesses. We are finding that we have quite a few businesses that were on our roster that are in fact closed. We've been mailing, different things to them, bills, and like for several years now. So I mean, that's a cost to the locality to continue to send mailing to something that is not in fact there. Another interesting byproduct of the closures is that we're finding that although yes, one business may have closed, something else has come in and has replaced it that didn't get a license either. So the closed businesses are in fact turning into new businesses as well. And then my investigator that's working the new businesses, he's got quite a few that are going through the process to get their license established. We don't want to just set them up. We want them to go through the necessary checkpoints such as zoning approval and health inspections and anything that we would require of any business opening up to follow, the normal channel. So we've got several businesses in the pipeline, working through that. And it's been very interesting to see, what has happened that we were unaware of. We have a good relationship with our zoning department and a good relationship with our economic development department, and we stay up on local media and business journals and that sort of thing. So the expectation wasn't necessarily that a big business would sneak in without us knowing. It's more the small and medium-sized businesses, and we have found, in fact, they're moving in and out with a fairly sizable volume that we were unaware of. So we're working towards getting the businesses that are here unlicensed, getting them set up correctly, and cleaning up our records internally to make sure we don't continue to reflect businesses that have since left the locality. For us, it's been a time-saving tool, and and a definite focus on safety. So we've enjoyed using it to date, and we're continuing to use it. And I think as time goes on, we're going to continue to find more and more value in the program.
I mean, all the things that Andy said in his slide, pretty much applied to us, except maybe geography. We're not that big, so we can get to the other side of town in a day. But definitely all of those hurdles were there for us, and we feel like this is going to help us. The one other thing I might say about the data, and our IT department really vetted Andy's team hard. They wanted to make sure that they were on the up and up, and you got to remember that Andy's going to be looking at Facebook and Instagram, wherever he can find information for you. So you always want to be sure that your ID department is allowing that information to come into your compliance team without any trouble.
Carl, Stephanie, I have a couple questions if you don't mind me asking. All right, so now I remember talking to you, and this may be something this may catch you off guard, but I remember when a while back I asked a question, and you said, "Oh, well, we would normally get return mail and then think that business was closed." And you had said, no, it only moved. Can you expound on that?
Well, we found that the return mail would come back, and the business had actually moved to a different location, told no one, didn't tell zoning, didn't get a new zoning approval to be there. So we would just close them in our system, which was, really not the best thing to do, because we didn't want to send somebody just to ride by to see if this place was closed. So having that extra information that you provide, makes it easier to make that determination. I think the difficult thing when they actually do close and you're getting return mail is to determine when they closed. But I think, the information you provide kind of gets us there. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. So, so for everybody who's an attendee of this webinar, remember there's the Q&A piece where you can type in a question. And I'm thinking Chester's been answering questions as we go. All right, so Megan has a question, and it is, are you able to provide the business federal ID numbers as part of the data? And the answer at this time is sometimes, but no. At this point, we're not providing that back. A lot of it is um, a lot of that is not something that is online or searchable in the data fields that we've been grabbing. And so far, the jurisdictions that we have not asked for that. But if that is something that I would imagine that we might be able to append. What we do in the product is if you have already like a unique ID number and a parcel number for a business, we will grab that and return it back so that you can easily find it. So if we think that a business, for instance, is closed, we will return back that number so you can go and identify it real easily in your CAMA. And go, oh, okay, and then start your investigation, knowing exactly which record we're talking about. Okay, so listen. Oh, here's another. Will this program provide us any corporate office information? Okay, so all right, so would we provide corporate office? So actually, Reason Consulting actually has two offices. We have one in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, but we also have one in Michigan. What we would provide is the hit of saying, hey, there's a Reason Consulting at this location, but not that it's the headquarters of the entire operation. So we would be seeing a commercial footprint that says that they are there and active, and that they're listing this as an address, and a whole bunch of other pieces of information to say that they are there. But at this point, it's difficult to identify if one's a corporate office, a headquarters, and one's just a sub office, for instance. Okay, so listen, that was a lot of information. I was hoping that it would be educational, and because I just don't see a lot of people talking about canvassing because it's so painful, and they just kind of want to make it go away without having to address the problem. Clearly you think, well, I personally think that data is the solution to helping alleviate a lot of the headaches that are in the canvassing issue. I think that there's a lot of databases that are out there that can be pulled together to help create a more fuller picture. If you're a jurisdiction looking at data, and I know there's one out there because I actually did talk to them. I think you're in the right direction. I really think that data is the way to go to alleviate a lot of these pain points that are out there. The goal in all of this is to fix the data, get your team to be looking at the right pain points, and I mean the right pieces of new closed data review. Those are the things, and then get the active ones that you're sure about them off the plate and just focus on those to try to drive down some of those pain points.
Hey, Andy,
yeah.
I wanted to add one other thing. You know, with canvassing, not all of these businesses are open during the day. So you may have a business that doesn't open till 8 o'clock at night, and you don't want your compliance team working at 8 o'clock at night. So that having that extra information can kind of help lead you to those places as well, where you may not even be able to stop in and visit unless you're going at midnight or 8 o'clock or something like that. So I just wanted to throw that.
Now, Carl, you're totally correct. I failed to mention that. I think the other part, and you touched on it, was that you used to send one person in the field, and now because of incivility the best way I can say it, you're now sending two people together, which is like now it used to be inefficient. Now you're like, hey, I'm going to compound my inefficiency. But I totally understand you doing it because especially if you get, you have one of your staff has a confrontation with, the public and they accuse your staff of something. And now you're like, okay, now it's an issue. I better send two people together, and it just drives inefficiency with that. And so the whole goal is like, could they do this from their home office or from the office, from something online in a much more efficient manner? All right, someone actually had a question. Can you provide more details about the information that the locality provides to you and how it is provided? Yeah, so we're looking for two files. The first file is your list of what you think are the active current businesses. So these are the ones that you would send a bill. Then the second list is, and it's commonly called the shape file, but it's your commercial residential addresses. What we're looking to do is we're looking for the commercial and residential businesses, and then we try to categorize them. If we think this one's a residential business and this one's commercial, and then it helps us also identify that if you have a commercial address, 123 Main Street, and you have nothing listed at 123 Main Street, but we're seeing a lot of, Andy's Tacos and the website references 123 Main Street, your jurisdiction. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for in order to populate it as a pinpoint. I went very fast. There's a lot of things that I could not cover in this. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I hope you guys got a lot out of this presentation in this webinar, and I really thank Norfolk for joining. I really appreciate it. This whole suite we're calling as part of our Audit Aware, and if you want to reach me or Dottie, who is also in sales, we gladly do a demo for you. It's much more involved. And then you can ask all the questions you have, and we'll go through a lot of live data and whatnot. But this is going to be the conclusion of the webinar. I really appreciate everyone attending. I hope you got a lot out of it, and thank you for your time.